The 2024 Mets offseason is officially underway, and that means David Stearns is hard at work putting together that 2025 Mets roster.
What a year one it was for David Stearns in Queens, and there is so much reason to believe that year two will be even better. Now, Vito, we know there are a lot of big-name free agents out there, and yes, we're all excited about the prospects of who the Mets might land, but it's not only about the big ticket items, it's about some of the smaller moves, the moves that David Stearns has excelled at making during his time as an executive in this league. Think about last offseason, a guy like Jose Iglesias, minor league contract in December. He makes the huge impact that he does. As we go along this offseason, yes, there will be some exciting moments, but I want everyone to keep in mind, it's some of the smaller moves that, while we're not thinking about them so much in December and January, they can make a huge impact in winning baseball games come September and October.
Hey guys, welcome to Meet at the Apple. I'm Vito F. Khaleesi. You can follow me on Twitter at Vito F. Khaleesi. That's Jonathan Barron at JMB9191. And this is our first episode where there's no baseball happening at all.
None. It's over.
The Yankees lost the World Series. That's an important note. The Yankees did in fact lose the World Series.
There was some talking after. You know, some people think that the Yankees were like the 9th best postseason team and have the Mets way ahead of them, which after what we saw, I don't know that I disagree with that. And we could maybe talk a little bit about that World Series, the way things went. Quite it was reminiscent of 2015.
Yeah.
So much happened, but it ended in 5. Sad did not have baseball. You know, now we're truly in the full swing of winter with, it's pitch black outside now at 5:30 p.m. We turn the clocks back on Sunday, so that's a thing. And we got football, I guess. We got basketball and hockey. College basketball just started on.
The two of us don't have football.
New York City doesn't have the best football right now, but college basketball started on Monday night. St. John's with a 32-point win against Fordham.
Indiana football's doing really good, right?
Indiana football is doing quite well. I didn't think that you would ask.
7-0?
9-0.
9-0, sorry. 2 of those wins don't count, according to what I think.
9-0. But yeah, we're not here to talk about college football or any of those other things. We're here to get you guys set for the offseason because, like Vito said, it's the first real offseason episode. And
first one.
There's a lot of business to take care of. Some of that business has already started on Monday. Qualifying offer deadline day came about.
Well, let's lay it out. What we want to do for you guys today is we want to lay out the map to the offseason for you. We're going to lay out all of these important dates that you, the Mets fan, or just the baseball fan who happens to stumble upon this podcast, should keep an eye on and pay attention to as we trek through this brutal winter together and wait for Mets baseball to return.
Also, note it's like 75 degrees outside, so it's not that brutal.
Yeah, I know. I wore a giant hoodie today and then had to put an outfit together because I was only planning on wearing a hoodie.
Halloween being 80 degrees.
I know. Remember in college when it was a snowstorm? Well, you weren't here. You were in Indiana, I guess, during that Halloween.
I was. I think Halloween 03, it was like 75 degrees that day.
Yeah.
But anyway, proceed.
So the first date, which just passed yesterday, November 4th, free agency begins. Deadlines for options and qualifying offers are in. The Mets extended qualifying offers to 3 players, Pete Alonso, Luis Severino, and Sean Manaea.
No, and there were only, I think, 13 qualifying offers extended across the league. 3 of those, obviously, with the Mets. And 3 interesting cases. You know, Pete Alonso, we all know the incredible 6 seasons he had in New York. Sean Manaea, who chose to opt out of his contract before the deadline got there. So Sean Manaea has a chance if he wants to come back on a 1-year deal for $21 million. That's what the qualifying offer is this year, a smidge above that. And then there's Luis Severino, who signed a 1-year, $10 million deal with the Mets last offseason. So the qualifying offer is really double that. But who knows? Maybe Sevy is looking for a multi-year commitment. And the thing about the qualifying offer, Vito, is it's really not commonly accepted. You look back, since it came into place. A guy like Jock Peterson accepted it a few years ago. Martin Perez accepted it a few years ago.
Marcus Stroman after the 2020 season accepted it. And that was the biggest shot. That one was the most surprising, I think, at the time for a fan.
Well, I think that the qualifying offer for guys who accept it, they're in that I'm going to show you type situation where maybe there aren't a bunch of multi-year offers out there for them, or maybe they're anticipating they're not being.
Stroman was also such a weird situation because it was right after the COVID year where some players...
Well, he didn't pitch in the COVID year. So it's a twofold thing. You know, it's no commitment. It's 1 year. And the qualifying offer is high. It's, to pitch for $21 million. So who knows? Maybe this year there are a few more qualifying offers extended. Some guys notably that didn't get qualified. One in the Bronx, Gleyber Torres. And, it's a gamble both ways. Teams, if they choose to accept or extend the qualifying offer, a guy might take it when you don't expect it. Then you're on the hook for $21 million. So maybe a team like the Yankees didn't want to pay Gleyber Torres $21 million for 1 year. So, and of course, if you make the qualifying offer and a guy turns it down and he signs elsewhere, there's draft pick compensation on the back end, benefits the team. So 13 guys got it, 3 of them being Mets, and we'll see what happens with those 3 qualifying offers that the Mets extended to, like you said, Severino, Manaea, Pete Alonso.
Now, the first key dates where you might start seeing some action starting, you might start seeing some of those beat reporters starting to talk about rumblings of things are happening right now, because from November 4th to November 7th, the GM meetings are happening in San Antonio.
Jorge Soler already was traded by the Braves to the Angels, and we saw Michael Wacha sign a 3-year extension to keep him in Kansas City for $51 million. So there is action already, and I think that some teams like to jump the market, get a little bit more aggressive. Other teams want to see how things unfold. You know, there are some big free agents. Obviously, Juan Soto is one of them right now.
That's Juan.
That's Juan. That's a situation that might take a little bit longer to play itself out.
Yeah.
With a lot of teams in the bidding. Obviously, Scott Boras is his agent. Oftentimes, the way free agency works, especially a free agency like this year, where you have a guy like Juan Soto, 26 years old, in the prime of his career, maybe not even in the prime of his career, he might hold the rest of the market up. You know, you have a bunch of teams that are focusing their energy on a guy like Juan Soto. Obviously, only one team is going to come away with Juan Soto's services.
Juan Soto services is tough.
Juan Soto services, and then teams are going to have to pivot. And that's where you'll see a secondary market really bubble up, probably immediately thereafter. So,
And Scott Boras he's going to have a busy offseason because he represents, 2 guys on the Mets alone, Pete Alonso and Sean Manaea.
Right. Well, you know, Scott Boras is a big power broker in this game. He obviously is incredible at what he does.
Former Mets minor leaguer.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know he played in the system. But, we've seen the Mets do all sorts of business with Scott Boras. He's Brandon Nimmo's agent. Brandon Nimmo signed the 8-year contract with the Mets a couple off seasons ago. So it's going to be an interesting offseason now that free agency has officially begun and teams are free to sign players as they want. I think you'll see some smaller deals pop up here and there, but the real big fish, I think, the smoke will really start to rise as we get to the winter meetings, which is one of the key dates we'll talk about. But it's an exciting time of the year. It's an exciting time to be a Met fan, as we talked about a couple of episodes ago. The financial flexibility that's been spoken a lot about with the New York Mets and the many different options, the many different openings the Mets have to fill. I think the possibilities are endless here for the New York Mets.
For sure. You heard David Stern say it in his first offseason press conference, where he said the entire player universe is available to the Mets. So fans should be excited every day is a new opportunity, right? It's funny. You say that during the season and you mean like wins and losses, and now in the offseason, it's like anything can happen on any given day.
Yeah, well, look, last year we saw some trades that might have been a little bit under the radar, and especially to me, the acquisition of a Tyrone Taylor, who played such a huge role for this 2024 Mets team. Most people thought about Adrian Hauser because he was a guy that was going to be in the starting rotation for the Mets early on in spring training, but it turned out that Tyrone Taylor was the guy who really made the big impact there. So there's all sorts of small moves also. Jose Iglesias was a minor league deal that the Mets signed, or they signed Jose to. And Jose wound up, of course, having the massive impact. And now he's been enshrined in Cooperstown because the OMG sign, or one of the OMG signs, there were a few, is now on display in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So that's really cool also. So if you guys want to go see the sign that guys like Sevy and Quintana and David Peterson and the rest of the pitching staff were holding, that's now in Cooperstown. So a really cool little footnote there. But the entire offseason is going to be fascinating. Also keep in mind, David Stearns is starting this offseason already having had a year under his belt as the Pobo here in Queens. Last year he came in, he was parallel pathing. He was evaluating what was here, and he was also trying to add. So I think he's in a different position, a better position, having gone through a full season, having put people that he wants to put in place in the front office, and now they really get to work with, like we mentioned, a lot of the money that they have, all the resources that they have. And, there are conversations, I'm sure, happening between GMs at the GM meetings in Dallas about guys in trades who maybe the general public isn't thinking about or talking about really. So this could be one of the most fascinating off seasons in baseball history. The 2019 offseason was also fascinating. You had Bryce Harper on the market. You had Manny Machado on the market. There was this feeling of this could be baseball Armageddon with a big power shift. That might have been a bit dramatic. And, some of the numbers that people were talking about for Bryce Harper back then, people were saying 5, 6, 700 million. You didn't really know. It was a big contract. The years were a bit longer, so it shrunk the AAV a bit.
Yeah, everybody thought he was going to be the first $500 million guy.
Correct, especially after Stanton got $325 from the Marlins back in 2015. And we're not going to sit here and try to predict where, the Soto sweepstakes or any sweepstakes winds up going.
I think after last year, there's no predicting. Because I don't think anybody saw Ohtani going for $700 million.
Right. And obviously there's some caveats to $700 million.
Yeah, but that number, like when you saw that number, that was not a number you expected to see in any way whatsoever.
Of course not. But,
So there's no point. My point is there's no point in even it's stupid for anybody to sit here and be like, this is what I think he's going to get, because you genuinely can't guess anymore.
You can't guess. But as far as the impact that this offseason is going to have in terms of the power of baseball, the power of brokers, and the standings for, the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, dare I say 10 seasons from now, we're going to look back, I think, at this winter as where a lot of things changed. And that's exciting. And that could be terrifying too.
This is a turning point for a lot of teams in baseball. This is a point where you have teams like the Phillies who have to make a decision of, are you going even more in, or are you going to kind of take the pumps off the brakes a little? You have a team like the Nationals who obviously a lot of young talent, they have some money to spend. Are they going to be one of those teams that goes, maybe we should go all in right now? And I think it's all because of, like you said, there's so much talent in this free agency period right now. Plus, you saw this year, the wild card, anybody can get in. You look at the Mets, who are 11 games under 500. You look at the NL that looked like a total disaster. And then you go, oh, wait. You put a little effort into your team in the offseason. You really can turn your entire franchise around.
Yeah, I mean, you could also do it by, winning at the margins. Like the Marlins in 2023, they won a bunch of one-run games. They make the playoffs. The Diamondbacks made the playoffs. 2 years ago, it was the Phillies who got off to the rough start, who sneak into the playoffs, wind up going to the World Series. So yes, the new wild card, the new playoff format has worked. Yeah. I think it's really opened up the door to teams that might not in the past have had that path to postseason
Changed the
glory.
Trade deadline too. I mean, we saw this year.
Well, there aren't as many sellers anymore. There aren't as many sellers. So we said this a couple episodes ago. The Mets are truly in a position of power. There are some teams that are going to be looking to shed contracts. Guys that are approaching arbitration that some teams might not want to pay. And a team like the Mets or some other big time, money spending teams, let's say, could be circling up and trying to, make trades and take some contracts and flex their financial power to gain talent as we look at, full steam ahead of 2025, which this division is only getting stronger. You mentioned the Nationals. That's a great call out. They won 73 games in 2024. The expectation was not 73 games. They incorporate guys like Dylan Cruz and James Wood. That's a team that's on the rise. And obviously the Braves, you think, will be healthy again. Acuna, Strider back next year. Schwellenbach emerged as an ace for that team this year. Matt Olson, a big bounce back candidate. Yeah. You name it. So it's going to be a real dogfight. You mentioned the Phillies as well. Arguably the best division in all of baseball. The Mets are right in the middle of it. So yeah, we keep getting back to this point, but huge offseason ahead, and there are a few more key dates that you have here for us, Vito.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna move on to an awards period, which is November 18th to the 21st. BBWAA. We're gonna be getting our manager of the year, which should be Carlos Mendoza.
I'm down.
Putting it out there, writers. I'm down. You want to write something? Write Carlos Mendoza's name. Francisco Lindor up for MVP, also up for Silver Slugger.
Yep.
And one person, Pete Alonso, also up for Silver Slugger.
Yep.
And then somebody snubbed that I want to give a shout out to, Mark Vientos, not a Silver Slugger finalist.
Yeah, just an oversight. During the season, I think we're early to it. There really wasn't a better offensive third baseman in baseball than Mark Vientos. But that's okay, because I've seen Mark on IG, already in the cages, working hard.
Change his profile picture.
To a monkey. I don't know if that's a little ETF type thing or what.
A monkey in a suit, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's some crypto. I'm not sure, but anyway.
No, it's not a site. It's not one of the bored apes or anything.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that.
No, I think it's just a monkey.
Well, we know Mark Vientos is already.
Do you think it's because of the zoo? Do you think it's because Harrison Bader said this is the zoo?
I don't think so.
Yes.
That was a prediction. You think that's it?
Yeah, Monkey Mark.
Monkey Mark. I don't know, Hunter. Is that a thing?
Mark's gonna go ape in 2025. I'll tell you that.
I like that. That's what it's for.
Yeah, it's not Monkey Mark.
Do you remember when he told us?
Go ape.
Do you remember when he told us in spring training that his favorite social media was Pinterest?
No.
He showed us his lock screen, and we were like, "Oh, where'd you get that?" He goes, "I just found it on Pinterest. I just love going around Pinterest.
Pinterest is great. You find all sorts of good stuff.
It's just he's one of the most fascinating individuals I've met.
Bike riding and doing all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is the work ethic that we've talked about so many times here on this show. And, if you follow Mark on Instagram, if you don't, you definitely should. He's in the batting cages. He's already working towards 2025. And, man, there is a lot. It's not even to dream on anymore.
No.
We saw him hit 27 regular season home runs, 5 in the postseason. But you could dream on a full season of Mark Vientos, and that is exciting.
I was talking to somebody who's worked here for a long time, and they were telling me, they were relating like our experience, like kind of still being towards the beginning of our Mets careers to like when he was like at that point getting to like be friendly with some of the younger guys on the team and what they became. And he was like, think about it. He was like, David Wright for me is like what could be Mark Vientos for you guys, of like that guy who like you saw come up, you got to know when they were just getting started, and then like when they're coming around for this stuff, you're just like, oh look, it's Mark.
Yeah, no, I mean he's a special guy. The work ethic unmatched, and really excited to see what 2025 has in store for him. But yes, he should have probably been a Silver Slugger finalist at third base. He wasn't. Guess what? More fuel to the fire because Mark's going ape in 2025.
But like we said, Francisco Lindor up for that in MVP, Pete Alonso up for Silver Slugger, and Carlos Mendoza Manager of the Year. And, I think all of those guys have very strong cases for those awards. So we're going to move ahead to November 19th. That's the deadline for players to accept or decline their qualifying offer. And then 6 p.m. is the deadline to protect players from the Rule 5 draft.
Yeah, so the big thing about the Rule 5 protection is that, for those who don't know, to be protected from the Rule 5 draft, you have to be placed on the 40-man roster. And this is a time of the year where teams have to make a lot of tough decisions on guys who maybe they invested a high draft pick with, and a player has struggled a little bit more than teams thought they would in the minor leagues, and 4 years have passed since they were drafted, and the decision has to be made, are we going to put him on the 40-man roster, and there's only 40 spots, or are we going to expose him to the Rule 5 draft? Now, the Rule 5 draft is a pool of players who are not thrown on the 40-man roster after those 4 years. And if you take a guy in the Rule 5 draft, you have to keep him on your active roster the entire season, or you send him back to the team that he came from. So, there are some examples throughout baseball history of Rule 5 drafts being very successful. I think Johan Santana is probably the biggest one of those examples. Darren O'Day was one from the Mets. But there's a lot of transactions around this time because teams, if they know that they're not going to protect a guy, but he might have some value to another team, instead of just exposing him to the Rule 5 draft, you could try and find a trade partner for a guy like Trey Sweeney with the Yankees last year, former first-round pick of the Yankees. The Yankees didn't see a place to keep him on the roster, and the 40-man roster is what it is. Some teams have spots. Some teams have only 36 guys, and you could add guys easily. Some teams are rich with talent, and it's not that easy, and this is why general managers and presidents of baseball operations have very, very difficult jobs, because they have to make the right decision. And sometimes this is an area where teams can get tripped up and they can let a guy with a lot of talent go. So this is a big transaction period, because teams are forced to consolidate and make these tough decisions on guys based on internal data and sometimes external data. When you're scouting, there are diamonds in the rough to be found. So this is an overlooked date, I think, but a very important date, the protection of the Rule 5 eligible players.
All right, so November 22nd, the non-tender deadline.
So non-tender deadline is for guys that are arbitration eligible. The arbitration process can get a little bit hairy. It's basically you go and negotiate or kind of argue with a player who is one of yours, and you kind of tell him why he isn't that good and why he doesn't deserve the money that he is going to ask for. But that only happens if a player is tendered by a team. And this date that you just mentioned, November 22nd, is the deadline for teams to say, okay, we do want to go to arbitration or get into the arbitration process with you, or we're not interested at all, we're going to non-tender you, and then you become a free agent. Now, arbitration can be settled before an actual hearing with an arbiter, which is always the best way of going about it. Things don't get ugly. You think back to the Dellin Betances instance when he was a Yankee. He and the Yankees had kind of a public falling out over an arbitration case. So things can get bad. Like I said, it's a team basically telling a player why he isn't worth as much as what him and his agent perceive his value to be. And that's an uncomfortable situation. So it's always best to not go to arbitration. Of course, it happens. But before we get to that point in time, teams have the opportunity to say, we want to go down this road with you, or we're not interested at all. We're going to non-tender you. Best of luck with your future endeavors. And the Mets have quite a few guys who they have the choice of tendering or non-tendering as we enter the offseason. I believe you have that list handy, Vito.
I do. Real quick, you brought up Dellin Betances. Saw a guy running the marathon in a Dellin Betances Yankees jersey.
I saw Dellin Betances all over the postseason. He was here at Citi Field, and then he was in the Bronx. I'm assuming he was rooting for the Yankees. I don't know who. I hope he'd be rooting for the Mets against the Dodgers, but I don't know.
Yeah, I just saw this guy running the marathon, and I was just like, that's an interesting one.
Well, he was. Wait, was there a name on the back?
Yeah.
Was it a jersey or a jersey?
It was a jersey.
What?
I know. That's what I was about to say.
all-
That is that because think about it. That is from a few years ago. So that means that's one of those thick, majestic jerseys. That's not
Yes.
one of the new lightweight Nike ones.
No.
That's a hot thing to run 26.2 miles with.
Especially after your team melts down in the fifth inning the way the Yankees did.
The Yankees did lose the World Series. That did happen.
They didn't just lose. They did the funniest thing ever.
Oh, man. That was sick. That was fun.
Was that better than a sweep for you?
Yeah, I said this to a bunch of people because I love the hope that was got by the fans.
So here's the thing, and Dave Roberts just said this on the Mookie Betts podcast, and I'm glad he said it because it validated my feelings, and everyone told me I was crazy. Had the Yankees won Game 5, the Dodgers were in trouble.
Yeah.
And the pressure and the voices and the doubt and the confidence on the other plane, and Aaron Judge is getting hot, and the Dodger bullpen is burned to a crisp. You're going back for Game 6 with a Yankee lineup that has 3-4 guys who could absolutely wreck a game with one swing of the bat. And Ohtani, as we know, was pretty much kaput with the shoulder injury.
They admitted after the season that he was.
There were a lot of things working against the Dodgers. The Yankees are up 5-0 in the fifth inning with Cole throwing a no-hitter to that point. That could have been bad if you're a Yankee hater like Vito and myself, and Hunter also. Hunter hates the Yankees.
Would you say the Dodgers were like the most injured team to win a World Series? Like,
Well, Freddie Freeman clearly was not that injured after the fact.
After here,
he clearly healed up.
I don't know what this beautiful grass did to Freddie Freeman, but his ankle was in great shape.
Well, I think it's a credit also to the Dodger training staff. But losing Ohtani, having him be a total non-factor.
But I mean, even in the season, like losing Tyler Glass, like they had a 3-man rotation for the World Series.
Well, Yamamoto was hurt. Gavin Stone went down. He was unavailable. A guy like Dustin May. I mean, you name it. Dustin May is like not even. Walker Buehler all season was dealing with coming back from Tommy John surgery. Mookie Betts had a broken finger, I believe, at one point or another. So
Walker Buehler not offered QO, right?
He was not given a qualifying offer, so he will have no draft pick compensation attached to him as a free agent.
I found that interesting.
It doesn't mean that a team can't sign a guy.
No, of course.
It just means for the 1 year, they don't. Every team has algorithms and values. The Dodgers clearly don't think that he's worth $21 million a year.
But also, it just makes it a lot easier for another team to sign a guy because you don't have to worry about losing your draft picks.
Of course.
And speaking of guys,
the tender guys.
David Peterson, Tyrone Taylor, Tyler McGill, Paul Blackburn, Alex Young, Luis Torrens, and Sean Reed Foley. Those are the players at a later date because we're still back in November. This is the deadline.
This also factors into the 40-man puzzle. Because if you tender a guy a contract and you want to keep him on your 40-man roster and eventually either agree before arbitration or go to arbitration, this is a guy on your 40-man roster. So all these things are kind of intertwined as a team takes care of a lot of housekeeping duties before you then go out and about and acquire, whether it's via free agency or via trade. So this is a big one, like Vito said. A couple of interesting names on there as well as we move into the construction of this 2025 Mets roster. I mean,
there's two bullpen guys on here. 2.5 because like Tyler McGill you saw was such a unique piece of the roster where you had a guy that was able to start at any time he needed to, and he was also able to jump into the bullpen. Paul Blackburn, we never really got to see fully pick up with the Mets because he had that unfortunate injury. Alex Young, obviously bullpen. Luis Torrens was a really formidable backup catcher. I would say we had the best catching situation we've had since Travis d'Arnaud this year.
Torrens came over and everyone, for good reason, pointed to the moment that Jose Iglesias walked in the clubhouse, that things changed. But the Mets needed to shore up that backup catcher spot as well. It wasn't working with Omar Narvaez, and Luis Torrens hit more than Narvaez did, and he also was elite when it came to nabbing would-be base stealers behind the plate. So that was really important for him to come in and help out, especially when Alvarez was either on the shelf with the thumb injury or struggling. Luis Torrens was a great plan B behind the dish. So we'll see what decision the Mets wind up going with there.
Sean Reed Foley, another guy, he got injured in a really unfortunate time.
That was a big loss for the Mets. He was pitching high leverage spots early in the season before the shoulder injury.
I would argue that Sean Reed Foley and Dedniel Nunez were the outside of Francisco Lindor.
Yeah.
2 biggest injuries of this season.
Yeah, those are probably, and Brooks Raley also. Brooks Raley was a big loss as well from the left side, and we talked about some of the big injuries that people didn't talk about so much in the bullpen. Drew Smith, another one of those injuries that, when push came to shove, kind of hurt the Mets down the stretch a little bit.
Really did.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to move on to December 8th to 11th. The stove is completely heated up. The hot stove is going. We are at the winter meetings in Dallas. Scott Boras is making his puns. We're all tuned in on MLB Network. We're all on YouTube. We're all on SNY. We're everywhere we possibly can be.
Yeah, the winter meetings are a lot of fun. I went back when I was still in college. There's a huge job fair for college students trying to break into the game.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's where I got my Marlins job when I was fresh out of college. Yep, Winter Meetings 2014 in San Diego. And it's, for me as a college kid being there, I'm in the lobby. I think John Lester signed with the Cubs during those winter meetings. And like Joe Madden, who was manager of the Cubs at the time, was just in the lobby, and like the news broke and you could feel the murmurs and the talking getting louder and louder. And then Joe Madden's just right there. And then all the reporters rush over to him. It's a really unique experience for a college kid or someone who wants to break into baseball. It is such a fantastic place to get your foot in the door. You show up with resumes. You just don't know who you're going to meet. There's so much networking, like I mentioned. There's the entire job fair, which worked out for me long term. Wound up in inside sales for the Marlins, as Vito likes to talk about often. But it is. I feel like the winter meetings are back. I feel like for a few years, it was always a thing outside of 2020, of course. But it wasn't really a time where so many constructive moves were happening. And I feel like the last couple of years, we've really seen that more. I know Aaron Judge re-signed with the Yankees during the winter meetings a couple of years ago. The Giancarlo Stanton trade happened back in 2018 at the winter meetings. Hunter, you got one?
The Mets signed Wilson Ramos at the winter meetings.
Okay, that's a deeper cut. The Mets signed Wilson Ramos at the winter meetings.
I have a good fact about the date. December 8th to 11th, right?
Yep.
If you are a Yankees fan who happens to be listening to the podcast, the Cowboys will be home on December 9th, and they'll be playing the Bengals. So if you're a Yankee fan, you have a reason to go out. You could go see your Cowboys.
That makes sense. That does check out.
Jerry World's cool. I haven't been there, but I've heard great things.
Oh, maybe we should go.
Yeah.
All right. So December 8th through 11th, winter meetings in Dallas. Move on.
What's happening during the winter meetings?
During that, two major things. December 10th, the 2025 draft lottery. December 11th, the Rule 5 draft.
And the draft lottery, like we saw last year, the Guardians winning the lottery. They didn't have great odds to win the lottery, so anything can happen in that draft lottery. So that's an exciting time. Of course, the draft then in July. And like you mentioned, the Rule 5 draft, which I believe is just in a big conference room, really. It's very grassroots.
Yeah.
But like we mentioned, some diamonds slip through the cracks. Some teams make mistakes. We saw it. I compare it to the expansion draft in the NHL. Not so much Seattle, but Vegas, where teams just, sometimes teams fail to evaluate what they have in-house internally.
Speaking of hockey, follow John on Instagram at JMB9191 to get all your fantasy hockey tips.
Yeah, you should do that.
You're the sleeper fantasy hockey guy.
I hit.
I know. I'm telling people.
I got Anders Lee scoring a goal tonight against the Penguins.
Well, that was 2 nights ago.
No. Tonight.
Oh, tonight. Like Thursday night.
Tonight. Anders Lee has doubled his shot output from last year to this year.
I mean,
and he leads the NHL in high danger shots on goal.
Are you saying we have an interview to put out soon?
We did talk to Anders Lee.
We did. I asked you yesterday if we
You
should
better get it out sooner than later.
All right.
I also saw a comment that asked about Devil's Love on the podcast. I think last time we talked about the Islanders and the Rangers. Nah, there's no Devil Love here. There's no Devil Love here, sorry.
We have a Devils fan in the building.
Who? Will?
Yeah.
Is he a fan?
He goes to games.
Shout out Will and many others for completing the New York City Marathon, by the way, this past weekend.
Oh, yeah. Former
Jen Wilson.
Current Red Sox
Janie.
But Emily Epstein. Becky. Yeah, I mean, this place.
I couldn't imagine. I mean, I run a 5K and I'm gassed.
I have a video of myself trying to say hi to Will and screaming out, and Will does not hear me or see me.
Damn.
And then I realized I never told him where I was going to be. I just said I'll be in Queens.
Also, damn. But no, the Devils are cool. The Devils are a threat. The Devils are really good this year.
Right.
I'm just a spurned Central Jersey boy who grew up in the Scott Stevens, Scott Niedermeyer, Patrick Elias, Sergei Brylin, Marty Brodeur days. So I have a scar on my heart.
Why don't
And
you just name the entire roster while you're at it?
pretty good, right?
Let's move on. January 9th.
Danico.
January 9th, arbitration filing deadline. And then we're going to move ahead to January 15th. International free agency opens up. And that is incredibly important because you want to talk about some important players in baseball on the Mets who came from that. You could talk about Francisco Alvarez. You could talk about one free agent right now, Juan Soto. So this is for minor league, for prospect watchers, I would say this is the most important day of the offseason.
Yeah, a lot of the handshake agreements that are made in advance, they become official on this date. It's the same date every year. And this year is going to be, I think, a pretty big free agency, international free agency signing for the Mets. And, there's two ways to acquire talent in the organization. It's the amateur draft, the MLB draft, and it's the international draft. So, people really focus on the July amateur draft, but this date is just as important to get talent into the organization, like you mentioned. And the Mets have done very well in recent years. This has been an area that the Mets have really beefed up since Steve Cohen has taken over the organization, with signing bonuses and just making the New York Mets an attractive place for young baseball players.
The Dominican Academy
in Latin America, the Dominican Academy.
It is a beautiful place. They don't just focus. The cool thing about the Dominican Academy is obviously baseball is the focus, but they also do a lot of work to get all of their guys' high school diplomas. They have I wish I had on hand right here what the graduation rate was there, but they do a lot of work to make sure that these guys are also getting an education outside of baseball because the truth is baseball's a hard sport. Not everybody makes it to the big leagues, but they try to do whatever they can so that these guys have a chance to succeed in life in some way if it's not baseball. So really, really great place. And David Stearns has even said that he remembers being here for when it first opened up as an intern and then to see what it's become has been incredible. So
yeah, the Mets, I think a good way of putting it is the Mets really invest in the future of these players, these young men, not just players. And that's a big part of cultivating talent on the field as well, is having guys be able to do it off the field as well. So
if you want a guy like Jose Iglesias to take a minor league deal with your team, you want him to see that you take care of your minor leaguers.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing to have depth. That's what you've seen the Dodgers do for years. So international free agency, January 15th, we will definitely be covering that once it's over. We'll try to talk to somebody from in-house, get a breakdown of the guys that were acquired. But let's move on. January 25th. Guys, you get to come back to Citi Field. It's Amazin Day. Tickets are available on Mets.com right now. You could go get some Tiki Wikis. But this place is going to be... It's going to be cool to be back here before the season starts back up. I remember being being here for the St. John's, the first game ever played here, St. John's, Georgetown. Just being excited to get into the ballpark.
Who played in that game for St. John's?
You've told me this before.
You should just know it.
Well, I didn't watch the game. I just walked around. I watched a little, but I mainly walked around.
It wasn't a day of thing. It became a thing after the fact.
Who was it?
Do you know, Hunter?
St. John's 2009? No.
Joe Panic.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But Amazing Day will be a little bit different.
Amazing Day is going to be... No, I'm just saying, if I was excited to just get into the ballpark, to just be here and see the stadium, this is a chance for you to come here. We don't have details yet on what's going on, but we can assure you it's going to be a day you're never going to forget. You could go back to the Fan Fest that happened here a few years ago and use that as kind of a point of reference. A point of reference of what could be happening. But
POR.
January 25th, Amazing Day. Go get your tickets now because those things are going to sell out soon.
They are. Like you said, it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of great programming, a lot more details to come. But it's a nice way, I think, to kick off at a very exciting time of the year. The Super Bowl is right around the corner. And then after that, it's baseball season, pitchers and catchers report. Shortly thereafter, spring training is underway. And before you know it, April 4th will be here. We'll be singing "O Canada." We'll
February
be singing 12th. The national anthem.
February 12th.
It'll be time for play ball.
February 12th will be when pitchers and catchers report. So that is, I don't want to skip over the date because we've been such a good job of giving you every date.
Yeah. So put that one on your calendar as well. But the point is that we are fully entrenched now in this timeline that the offseason is. And I really think to navigate the offseason, we've got Thanksgiving ahead. We've got the holidays. And then we have crappy January where it seems like it's never ending. Then you get into February and then you get a taste of baseball and the first spring training game comes. And then you have the entire rest of the month. And when you look at it as a whole, it's a lot. It's daunting, I think. The best way to navigate the offseason, Vito, is by taking it segment by segment, I think. You cannot look at it like anything. You're running a marathon, let's say. You can't think 26.2. You got to take it 1 mile at a time. And I think, just like a baseball season, very long, you have segments. You got Memorial Day. That's the first segment, opening day to Memorial Day. Then you got maybe the start of summer, June 21st. And you got July 4th. And you got the end of then you got the All-Star break. There's different little landmarks along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
The only way to navigate an offseason and really survive it, because we all miss baseball so much. It's only been what? A week? I think it's been a week.
Yeah.
No, the Yankees lost on Wednesday.
6 days.
It's been 6
Yeah.
days. It's been
a week when this is out there.
Right. It's been 6 days and I'm starving for baseball already. And we're so far away. But a lot of excitement's going to happen. Moves are going to pop up. They're going to get us all amped up, juiced up. You got Amazin Day. You got some other things along the way. Hopefully some fun press conferences here at Citi Field. Hopefully we get to catch up with some of your favorite Met players during the offseason, some coaches, manager, you name it. But you got to take it little by little. And I think that when you look at the calendar here of the offseason, it kind of helps you digest it a little bit better than if you just think, man, I got 135 days till opening day on April 4th. Or that's not even opening day, it's the home opener. So little by little, take it in stride. You got a lot of micro things that are happening that are going to shape the 2025 New York Mets or whatever team you root for. There are all these tiny things that you might not think of them as big deals now, but there might be a day in June or July 2025 where you're like, man, they made that move and I didn't even really pay attention to that. And wow, this guy has been an absolute godsend for my team. So little by little, guys. And it's not even cold out, really.
No.
Is it going to snow this offseason? Didn't really snow last year,
I think
did
it snowed once while we were
When
gone.
was the last time we had a true accumulation of like 8 or more inches in New York City?
8 or more inches, I don't know, probably like 3 years ago. I remember there was like one bad one a few years ago, but no.
That's bad. I want like a 2-foot blizzard.
You know what's fun about this winter? As somebody who celebrates both Christmas and Hanukkah, Christmas is the 25th, which is also the first night of Hanukkah.
Is that fact?
Which is fun because Christmas ends, and then you get like an additional week of the holidays. So like I'm looking forward to that because usually Christmas ends, and then like I'm like, oh man, I'm bummed out. There's nothing to look forward to. You're just in winter, like you're just literally
That's what
in
I'm
winter.
saying, January.
Yeah, so I know I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I've spoken to somebody who said they think Christmas and Hanukkah should just be moved to February because then like you kind of like have something to look forward to from Thanksgiving all the way to the winter.
Yeah, I don't know if that's possible.
No, it's not, but it would just be cool. All right.
Make the day after the Super Bowl a national holiday.
Look, before we get out of here, there's 2 things we do need to mention. The Mets made 2 moves. Kevin Herget has been claimed off waivers from the Milwaukee Brewers. You brought up before, Tyrone Taylor was one of David Stern's first moves. That was an Adrian Hauser and Tyrone Taylor trade. One of the first moves of the offseason again, David Stearns goes back to his old house, picks up some things, takes him over here. Born in Teaneck, New Jersey.
Jersey, shout out.
Maybe he's a Mets fan. We should find
He could be
out.
a Devils fan, too.
And in 2024 for the Brewers, 7 games, 11.1 innings pitched, a 1.59 ERA and 9 strikeouts. And then in AAA, 2.27 ERA, 47 innings pitched. So exciting acquisition there. And then infielder Luis De Los Santos was claimed off waivers from the Toronto Blue Jays. 26-year-old debuted in 2024 with Toronto, has only played 13 games. Hit 260, 375, and 441 in AAA Buffalo.
And Vito, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the signing of Dylan Covey, who spent time with the White Sox, the Phillies, spent time in the Dodger organization, also spent time overseas. Mets signed him to a major league contract, a guy that can be a starting option, can also pitch out of the bullpen. Primary sinker guy. We saw a lot of guys have success with the sinker for the Mets this year. Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, Jose Quintana, to name a few. So another one of those arms who can give you some length in the starting rotation, could help you in the bullpen. Interesting pitch mix. Went overseas, came back with a couple new tricks in his bag. So an interesting move. The Mets made that move a couple days ago. So talk about striking early in free agency. Dylan Covey was one of those moves that, again, we mentioned under the radar, not so celebrated, but could really help a baseball team once the season gets going. So I wanted to throw that in there as well.
Of course. Well, guys, thank you for listening to this one. You can catch us here all off season. We're going to do 2 episodes a week, definitely. At least 1 episode recorded at the stadium. 1 an interview we might have recorded recently, or one that we recorded a little while ago and saved for you all. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Vito F. Khaleesi. John is at JMB9191. Thank you all for listening. Let us know in the comments what topics you want us to cover, and we'll meet you here right back at the Apple.